And
There we
do,
go.
oh,
There we go.
yeah. 6:04, calling the meeting to order. Roll call. Barry Johnson, I'm here. Jeff Carter.
Yeah.
Rick Rosner. Yes. Susan Hammer.
Susan, are you there?
Star 6.
There she
Yes.
is.
Thank you. Richard Niederberg, not yet. Brandon Marino.
Here.
And Scott Mandel.
Present.
And Julie Houlihan. Not yet. We do have 5 of 8, so we have a quorum. Moving on to number 2, approval of February 2nd, 2022 Government Affairs Committee meeting minutes. Any corrections? If not, without objection, we'll consider them approved. All right, considered approved. Thank you. Update by the committee chair. At the last board meeting, we didn't get to the 2 motions that we had, and I actually had Randy hold them from the second part last week of the meeting because they've both passed, I believe, and I need to check it out, but I think they had passed before that meeting, and I'll determine before the board meeting if I still want to submit them to get our feeling in on it anyway and see if the board will pass them. Because a lot of times the council files continue on even once the city council votes for something. So getting our opinion in is not always a bad thing even after the fact. So I will check on those both. One had to do with the ordinance that takes away the vetting process from the surrounding community for adding alcohol to restaurants, or like going from a beer and wine to a full line of alcohol, that sort of thing. And the other one was for the pilot project for the solar powered lights, which we also said we wanted to keep the historical street light fixtures and structures. So we'll, those may be back on the board agenda. That's all I have for the update. Anybody on that want to say anything on number 3? Okay, moving on to number 4, public comments on non-agenda items within the committee's jurisdiction. Any public comments? I guess, Jeff, that could be you if you wanted to, Jeff Hartwick, if you wanted to say anything.
The only thing I'm going to say is there's a resolution that was introduced by the city council, I think a couple of days ago, in which the city of LA wanted to make Kiev the sister city of Los Angeles. So that's before the city council. Maybe that's something that would be under the purview of government affairs to take up at some point. That's all. Thanks.
Do you remember the council file number?
I do not, but it was in the March 1st council referrals.
Okay. I'll find that. And if I let Randy know about this, would you be willing to bring a motion to support that since it's not on our agenda tonight? And that way it could be voted on at the board meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I will check that out, and I'll copy you on whatever I send to Randy for that and let him know that you would bring it. Thank you.
Hey, Julie, how you doing?
Anybody else? And Julie is now here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Sorry, guys.
It's all right. We'll just pile on Richard Niederberg when he arrives.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Moving on to number 5. Do we have a response? Anybody want to say anything to what Jeff just said on that motion that he's going to bring? Okay, moving on to number
Hold on,
6.
Jeff had his hand up.
Just
Go
briefly,
ahead.
I would wholeheartedly support it. I don't know what's happened in the last 2 hours, but I think this would be a great thing for Los Angeles to do as quickly as possible. So thank you, Jeff Hartwig, not me, for seeing that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 6, formation of an ad hoc committee to review and make recommendations to the Neighborhood Council Code of Conduct revisions, and then report back to the Government Affairs Committee. I decided to make Brandon the chair of this ad hoc committee because he's so far the expert on this item. He's brought it to the attention of outreach, and he's also brought it to the attention of government affairs. So, Brandon, you're appointed chair for this as long as you accept.
I'll accept.
Okay. And now we do have 4 board members that showed interest in being on this, and actually only 3 could be on it, because we can only have a total of 4 board members on an ad hoc committee, as well as any stakeholders that wanted to do it.
Well, let me ask you. Hold on.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the stakeholders, if we add stakeholders, it has to be a public meeting, correct? If it's just the 4 board members, it doesn't have to be a public meeting. Brown Act, correct?
Is that how you read it?
I don't know. From what I understand, if you start bringing in stakeholders, then it has to be a Brown Act meeting. If it's just the 4 board members, then it doesn't have to be a publicly accessible meeting. I'm not sure about that. I'll look into that.
Okay, because I also thought if the board was appointing this ad hoc committee, I agree with what you're saying, but I think if it's a committee doing it to report back to the committee and not the board, it might be different. But do we have any stakeholders present tonight?
Well, Jeff's
yeah, we do. That are on the committee.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could just do it with 4 board members, like you say, because you're going to report back to the committee, and at that point, any stakeholder would get to comment.
Right.
So, I'm fine with that, and I think we can get it done faster that way, and we probably don't want to. It's not going to be voted on right away, but they could spring it on us too, I suppose, without much notice. What do you think, Brandon?
They want to get the digital communications policy out of the way first, and they'll work on code of conduct. So,
okay.
From what I understand, the first one's going to be like the 21st of March. That'll be the code of conduct vote. And it's interesting is that Bonk has been canceling this. They have 2 meetings a month. They've been canceling this second meeting. They have not had a second meeting in January, did not have a second meeting in February, and suddenly they're going to have a second meeting in March, and suddenly they have a brand new digital communications policy, which is interesting, to say the least, and I'll leave it at that. But in terms of, they're going to have some problems with the code of conduct. I don't think they're close to it yet. So we have time to form an ad hoc committee and formulate a motion, a response to it.
So why don't we do that with the 4 board members? We'll figure out who the other 3 are. And, when they report back to the committee, if we still have to have, say, a further ad hoc, we could do it with stakeholders, theoretically, then, if there's a controversy. So let's do it this way first. Brandon, you had told me that Richard Niederberg and Scott had pointed things to say at the board meeting on this.
Yeah. Well, Scott always has pointed things to say. Look at him. Look at him.
Should we accept those 2, do you think?
Well, would it? And I know Scott, Richard, and Jeff Hartwick also was expressed interest, and so did. Hold on one second.
Alexa wanted to be on as well.
No, I've got to mute my Amazon device. Yeah, Alexa said she was interested as well.
I'm fine to bow out if you want to keep it all attorneys and Brandon,
3 attorneys and 1 judge.
The only,
well, it'd be 2 attorneys, 1 judge, and a cartoonist.
So, yeah, Scott, why don't we do that? Because you'll be able to comment on the findings of the ad hoc.
That's fine.
And I know you will, and you'll be great for that. So that helps us out, helps us whittle it down.
We have Jeff here, Jeff Hartwick. Do you have any comments on this, or are you?
No, I agree with everything Barry said and what you've said so far.
Okay. So the 4 board members will be myself, Richard Niederberg, Alexa Steinberg, and Jeff Hartwick. And that'll be the 4 board members, correct?
Yep.
Got it. Yeah, there's some interesting. It's nice to have a couple of attorneys and a former judge on this, because I don't think this is legal. I'm not I'm not an attorney. I have no clue. I'm just looking at it and just phonetically thinking this doesn't look right. And they keep. And it's interesting, Scott. You've been reading the Power LA emails. We've gotten 2 of them in the past couple of days. The e-blast, and before that another email where they were talking about an assembly bill. I forgot the assembly bill, 334, something like that, where they're talking about on social media. If you happen to thumbs up a post, it's considered communication, and it's interesting. But in this respect, they're calling us city officials. But when they're talking about the code of conduct, they're calling us volunteers. They're calling us 2 things that aren't the same. So it's very interesting what they're trying to play here. And I would like to. What was that, Jeff?
I say it would be hard to make an argument that we could be both of those things.
That's the whole point. So it would be. It's going to be a fun ad hoc, I think.
Good.
I don't know who. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I'll leave it up to you when you're going to meet. But do you want me to put this on our April agenda for reporting back? Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll probably have a couple of meetings and then report back.
And then it's always possible if you have to go back to the drawing board, have it again in May. We'll just see, and maybe we'll have a better idea of how soon it's going to be voted on too.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, sounds good. All right, I'll move on to agenda item number 7, discussion and possible motion, community impact statement with respect to Council File 22-0152 and 21-0156 for copper wire theft prevention from streetlights. This has to do with our motion supporting the trial of solar-powered streetlights, but this is actually talking about the copper wiring, and they're similar motions. I think we can support both of them, and they both are looking at identifying neighborhoods that have had this problem. And I know Studio City has a couple neighborhoods like mine that have been hit twice. So it's not one of these motions comes from like a South LA council member who's mentioning it in his area, but it's hit in the valley too. So I'll read you the idea I have for a proposed motion on this. The Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, supports Council File 22-0152 and Council File 22-0156 to combat street lighting copper wire theft and identify those neighborhoods most significantly impacted by copper wire theft outages. This motion is also to be submitted as separate community impact statements, CIS to CF 22-0152 and CF 22-0156. Do we have any stakeholders who wish to comment on number 7? Okay, committee members?
Just have a question.
Sure.
Which I think somebody else was up before I was.
Not me.
Okay, all right. So this shows, I guess, how out of touch I am. What we're saying here is that when these thefts are not caused by an accident and then some guy says, hey, let's drive around and see if we can find some broken lights and steal the copper. These are caused by premeditated attacks on the structure. Is that right?
Yes, and
In other words,
they go.
Barry and I say, let's go out and steal some copper tonight, and then we look for a place and we do it. We take it.
They go and they pry open the bottom of a streetlights fixture where they can pull the wiring out. There are also just things in the ground that you can take up, kind of similar to your water meter. It's kind of that thing, and you lift up the cover and you can get to the wires. I know I have my neighbor across the street has one of those. So and then they start pulling the wire out from there.
So that leads to
premeditated.
To my question is, when you say an outage, does that mean an outage on just that light, or is it more? Is it like the whole street, or is it just the light?
It can take out the whole neighborhood for several blocks, which it did in mine.
Okay, I did not know that. Thank you.
And then because of COVID, it takes 8 weeks to get it fixed.
Right.
Brandon.
Yeah, my concern about this is the line to report in the council in 30 days on an overtime staffing plan to help combat copper wire and power theft and lighting outages, blah, blah, blah. This bureau is already having a hell of a time fixing regular lights in terms of bulbs. Takes weeks to fix a light. I don't think adding overtime is going to do a damn thing. They need more permanent staffers. They need a bigger budget for more permanent individuals running this, not just overtime. I mean, right now, Ventura Boulevard from Coldwater to Ethel is out. It has been for a couple of weeks now. I'm sure people have complained about it. Nothing's been done. So, and that could be just the box running it. It might not be copper wire. I don't see any damage. They've got problems over there, and I think overtime's not going to be the solution. I think they need to up the permanent staffing of this department, and I think this is just this is a little cheap on the city's behalf. It really should be permanent positions.
I think they're looking at it short-term overtime because to do what you're saying, I agree, but that they've got to go out and hire, and there's probably maybe some training involved. So, but we could certainly add to this motion that aspect.
Can I chip in here?
So let me get Scott first, who raised his hand, and then we'll go to you. Okay.
Okay, no problem.
All right, you're next.
Thanks, Barry. I really hope Brandon's wrong, and this need not be permanent positions, because this is going to be very expensive if the scrap dealers keep paying people for the copper wire that's obviously stolen from the city light fixtures, and it's just an endless cycle. I mean, it would be cheaper just to give the thieves the copper wire and not have them damage the light fixtures. And they're also stealing power. So they're tapping in and stealing power and the wire itself. So One thing I don't understand, these motions, these two council files could have been combined into one. I don't understand why they are two, but so be it. They spent 500 grand already on overtime. This has been going on since 2017. And this is the first mention that the city attorney and the police department are going to now go after the scrap dealers and sort of cite or put them out of business for failing to do the due diligence on where all this copper wire seems to be coming from. So that's actually the one from Krikorian, Blumenfield, and Mitch Farrell and Monica, not the Monica Blumenfeld one. And it just beggars belief why. I mean, this started in 2017, and they're finally instructing the city departments. I mean, short version, yes, of course, I support this. I'm just amazed how slow the city moves and how much money has already been lost and spent by not going after the scrap dealers criminally. I mean, they're just proposing doing this for catalytic converters and identifying the catalytic converters that are being stolen by the thousands. So the scrap dealers won't be buying those. Anyway, I'm done.
And I think these two council members submitted their, you notice how close in number they are. One ends in 2, one in 6. I think they submitted it on the same day, and neither one knew the other was doing it. And that's how we sort of came up with 2 that are quite similar. You know, I'm fine supporting this the way it is, just to get going on this, you know, because it's taking too long. You know, I don't know. Sure, we don't want to make this a permanent fix using overtime dollars, but I don't know if we want to hire a ton more city employees either. So, so I don't know. Anybody? Where do we want to go with this, Brandon?
No, I'm okay with it. I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm okay with it too. I just have another question. When you say scrap dealers, does whoever, I don't know, is it the police or I don't know who it is, but are there known people or entities that buy the stolen goods? And if there are, then shouldn't they be brought to justice, due process, whatever, of course, is it not that organized?
Well, metal scrap dealers will buy scrap from anyone, and if the people that still steal the wiring take off the covering around the wiring and cut it up into like 30-foot long or 10-foot long pieces, they can bring in a load and just say they got it out of a torn down house. There's really no way to prove where it came from. So it's hard, to prosecute either the people buying it or, they don't know. They're just they're in the business. I'm sure they know, they figure some of it's stolen, but it's unidentifiable. That's the problem.
And the rubber tubing they take off would clearly identify it as Los Angeles property.
Not necessarily, but it definitely would identify it as being 90-year-old wiring, which might clue them in.
Right.
But,
okay.
Right. Studio City was wired like in the late 20s. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Anyone else?
Yeah, Barry, I wanted to make it.
Yeah.
So
yes, I'm sorry.
I just basically I was going to say the same thing that's been said. When I read the first one, it's like, wait a minute, to try and patch a hole and not fix the hole is crazy. And then I read the second one and thought, they really need to make better effort at getting these guys and nabbing them. And there's got to be some way that you can find these, because it's probably a small group of people who just keep doing it. But in terms of the overtime, it really struck me like the fire department and the police department, who don't hire enough people, pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in overtime, and never fix the problem. Now they're talking about fixing the problem, but it sounds to me like a problem that's not going to go away until they get rid of copper wiring. And I think you hire permanent staff. If you have too many staff because the problem goes away, you let them go and say, sorry, we're overstaffed. I think it sounds like a problem that in 5 years, the Times will be writing a report on these people getting so much overtime and making $500,000 a year, rewiring our lights and doing a poor job at it because they're overworked.
Well, I could take this motion as it is, and at the very end where it says by copper wire theft outages, I could put comma, but without overtime. You want to do that?
I think that would be a good idea. Say just hire more staff, create more jobs, help the unemployment problem.
Point of order, Barry. Richard Niederberg just arrived at 6:31.
Thanks. So
I don't know. With respect,
do you like that amendment?
I don't. I personally don't, with respect, because if you just say comma without overtime, to me it implies that the people that are already there are going to do it, not necessarily that you're saying hire more people. But for me, that issue, it's a valid point, but I think it's fringe to the motion. So I would support the motion without specifying about the money, but that's me.
And they're going to be taken to task eventually when they have to present their budget to the City Council Budget Committee. So yeah, maybe I think we should just leave it as is and vote on it that way. So do you want me all to read it one more time? Okay, the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, supports Council File 22-0152 and Council File 22-0156 to combat street lighting copper wire theft and identify those neighborhoods most significantly impacted by copper wire theft outages. This motion is also to be submitted as separate community impact statements, CIS, to CF 22-0152 and CF 22-0156. And I see a hand raised. Go ahead. Susan?
Yeah, hello?
Oh, I'm a yes.
Oh,
I'm a yes.
Sorry. Okay. Oh, no. I see a hand raised ending in 264.
Oh, that's not me.
Yes, 264.
Hello?
You can speak. Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We over here. I'm in the East San Fernando Valley, and I had caught somebody on my camera that stole the wire from the front of my house, and it looked like they were scrap metalers. Somebody who was just going around picking up recyclables, and he did it very quickly. And my question to you is it possible that they could just retrofit the ones that have been vandalized into solar panel lightings? Does that make sense?
The city is already looking at that.
Oh, okay. And my next question is do we pay a tax every year for these lights?
Yes, you do. Every neighborhood that has them, you'll notice not every neighborhood has street lighting. every so many feet, and you're in a street lighting district, which is on your property tax bill. It'll say street lighting district,
Okay.
and they are renewed every so many years, and you'll see the city council on their agenda. They renew these districts every so often, and such that if a neighborhood wanted to get out of it, they actually could, but nobody ever does because they want to keep their street lights.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay.
Barry, did you need a second on that motion?
Yes. Do I have a second?
I'll give you a second.
Thank you, Scott. Okay. We will take a vote. All in favor of agenda item number 7 as I read it, raise your hand or say yes.
Yes.
Scott Mandel, yes.
Yeah, I'm a yes. So
Yes.
it is, thank you. It is unanimous. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 8, discussion and possible motion, community impact statement with respect to Council File 22-0139 for a new off-leash dog park at the, that's a typo, it should say south, at the south end of the park. Measure A grant award request is $2,090,000. And I'm going to read you the proposed motion I have for this. And I'm not, and you all are going to have to say if we want to support or oppose this. And the reason I put in supports or opposes, I think the south end of North Hollywood Park, which is sort of pointed like a triangle, right at the 170 on-ramp at Tahunga and Riverside, across from the church. There's a lot of residential right across the street on Tahunga there. And I don't know, I can think of better places in that park that wouldn't be so close to residential neighborhoods than that. So that's why I put it both ways. I'll read the proposed motion. The board of the Studio City, oh, and one other thing. We can chime in on this because this is something that's a regional dog park, and people in Studio City a couple blocks away, you can be sure would use it. So here's my proposal. The board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, either supports or opposes Council File 22-0139 for a new off-leash dog park at the south end of North Hollywood Recreation Center, nearest to Riverside Drive. This motion is also to be submitted as a community impact statement, CIS, to CF 22-0139. Do we have any stakeholders that wish to comment on number 8? Raise your hand if so. *9 if you're on the phone. All right, I will go to committee members. Anybody want to chime in on whether we should support or oppose this one? Yes, Scott.
So this council file has quite a few different dog park areas that are listed. So we're just going to comment on the one specifically to the North Hollywood Park, right?
Yeah, because
okay.
None of the others were really in our region. So
I got it.
Yeah.
I think they chose that area. I bring my dogs there fairly regularly. It is a de facto off-leash dog park as it is in that particular part. But to your point, it's much closer to that branch of the Tahunga Wash. So it's further away from Tahunga and all the church and the apartments and the residents and stuff. But it's already a dog park, so to speak, just not official, but there's an area that's carved out. I saw in the council file, they didn't actually have the map of where they're going to build this. They're just saying that it's the south end of the park. So if it's closer west, if it's further west all the way to the wash, it probably wouldn't have much of an impact on the people around there. If it's right at the edge of Tahunga, they'll hear the dogs barking. Plus, they're going to put in lighting and such. But I mean, I'm for more dog parks, and I just understand the point about the noise. So I'm kind of torn on this, but I do support more dog parks. So I would probably support this. Thanks.
And I did contact the park, and it's basically, it would be at that south point of the park by the 170 on-ramp, but it literally would be between Tahunga and the Little Tahunga Wash there, not including the running path on Tahunga and by the wash. You know, it wouldn't go all the way to the fence. It would be in between, so the runners could still go by. But I'm assuming also it's going to have, you know, a chain link fence all the way around, which also kind of, I don't know, I hate to see that in a park that's never had that, you know, in that part of the park. So I don't know. Brandon?
Yeah, I wish there was a map here, because comparing to Strathern Park West, which is the second item, it's almost the same exact thing, but Strathern Park West is the grant award request is 1.32 million, and North Hollywood Park is a little over 2 million. So I'm just curious exactly how big this is going to be. I would love to see a map if there's one that's available, because 2 and 3 are almost identical in what they want to do, but ours is going to be so much more expensive. I wonder what else they're going to do besides just the dog park, if there's going to be other amenities involved.
Yeah, go ahead. I think that was
720.
Yeah. Is that you, Susan? Did you want to speak?
I do want to speak, but that wasn't me. I like the idea of a dog park. Seems crazily expensive. You know, I don't drive by there very often. It seems like there's a lot of dogs there now. I agree with that, and not much other activity. You know, the yoga people and the workout people could all go a little bit further north, but there's no parking. And crossing Tahunga, they'd almost have to put a light there, a crosswalk. You know, they've got a crosswalk there now. I used to go by that every day after work, and it was such a dangerous crossing. They'd have to put in crossing and all that because the parking is terrible. But a dog park's nice, and it's not I don't think it's that well utilized.
That's a good point about the parking, though, because that neighborhood has no parking. I mean, and occasionally you can find a parking spot on Tahunga, on the park side of Tahunga. But yeah, that could be a problem.
It's usually full, and you know they have campers.
Which is one of the reasons I was thinking they should put it at the north side by Chandler, because by Chandler, near where Chandler goes under the 170, you can actually drive in, turn right, and there's a parking lot there. And that's where there's like a skate park. And I'm not sure, but I don't know if that parking is underutilized or not, but I was thinking that would have been a better area for parking wise.
Yeah, but they have that once a year carnival, and they have more people use that part of the park than the south end.
Well, this is the north, not the north side by Magnolia. It's the north section of the park's north side at Chandler.
Oh, up on Chandler.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never go by there. I don't know that. I don't know how much that's used.
You know, I think Brandon has a good idea. We really should get a map, and I don't know. I think we have some time on this, such that we could bring it back at the April meeting, and in the meantime, get mapped and see why this project is more expensive than some of the others. And if having a map, we can see just how big it might be on the south side. And then do a motion in April, possibly suggesting the alternative because of parking, just because parking on the south side, I think, is going to be a nightmare. Go ahead, Jeff.
And then
My question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering about cleanup and maintaining it. Is that part of the budget, or is that something that you just have to hope for?
I don't think that's part of the budget. I think but I do think recreation and parks, once these dog parks are built, they go in once a day and clean up. Anybody that uses dog parks, do you know that to be true?
The dog parks I go to, there are crews that come in. I believe it's once a week. It's posted on the entrance, and it says the park is closed on this particular day for these hours for maintenance. They just redid the Whitnall Highway dog park. That was a substantial grant, and sometimes they're more expensive because they have a large dog park and a small dog park, and then they have the handicapped access, and sometimes they even put in a parking lot. So I think the idea of wanting to see a little more detail of what the $2 million plus is going to buy from North Hollywood, I imagine it's going to be pretty nice. But maybe, I mean, we certainly all seem to support the concept of off-leash dog parks. We just want to see a little more than the concept.
Okay, I'm willing to bring this back in April.
Agree.
Yes, okay. And we can get some maps and stuff by then. And yeah, I am familiar with the Whitnall Highway dog park, and that one I think has a little more parking around. They don't have a parking lot, but they have more parking around it than there would be at this one on Tahunga. So,
I have a question really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, if they were deciding to take some of the park and turn it into a parking lot, that would be actually on the list, correct? Hydration station and a parking lot, correct? They would have to say it.
I assume so, but when I get more information, I'll definitely find out. Because as much as I want there to be parking, I wouldn't be in favor of it right there on the south side. When they've got a place they could, that's like a gravel parking or DG parking lot, or it may even be paved up on the Chandler end. So, yeah, I'll do some more research so I can give you all the information before our April meeting. So that will be tabled to April.
Barry, can I just ask one question?
Yes.
What makes these so expensive?
I don't know. Whenever it's the same reason when the city with their prop, what was it, prop KKK or whatever the one is for building homes.
You could consider that a rhetorical question if you want, but I just $2 million for it.
It costs $800,000 for a one bedroom unit. Our city can't do anything efficiently.
True. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, I'm going to move on to agenda item number 9, discussion and possible motion community impact statement with respect to Council File 22-0120 for streamlining and expediting the permitting process for electric vehicle charging stations, EVCS, as required by the State of California Amended Government Code Section 65850.7 in parentheses G in parentheses 1, comma, and it's Assembly Bill 1236. And my proposed, and just let me say, in regards to this the state law requires the city to do this, and this is essentially, again, is the city getting in line with the state law by trying to streamline the process for getting these put in, and based on the fact that they have to because of this new state law. So my proposed motion is the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council supports Council File 22-0120 for streamlining and expediting the permitting process for electric vehicle charging stations, in parentheses EVCS, as required by the State of California Amended Government Code, Section 65850.7, in parentheses G, in parentheses 1, for Assembly Bill 1236. This motion is also to be submitted as a community impact statement, CIS to CF 22-0120. Any stakeholders wish to speak on agenda item number 9? Yes, caller ending in 264. Go ahead. Unmute. Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Do those chargers have copper wire in them?
I imagine so. And from what I've seen of them, they look a lot more tamper-proof than our 90-year-old streetlights. And the thing is, though, most of them are on the streetlight fixtures that I have seen on our streets. And therefore, they're plugging into that same copper wiring. So if somebody were to go steal the copper wiring out of the base of that street light, they'd also be pulling the power to the charging station for the vehicle. But that, again, is not the problem of the charging fixture. It's the problem of the 90-year-old wiring and the 90-year-old street lights. So hopefully our other motion tonight will get at that problem. So this really is just, this motion is just to get more of those charging stations installed and at a faster pace, essentially.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? I'll go to committee members. Go ahead, Richard. Unmute.
Wondering what the expense is going to be. Is it going to be like a metered charging station or what? And will we hear about how much per minute or per hour?
Well, you pay, the ones I've seen on these streets, you do pay, but I haven't really looked at them, how much it is, because I don't have an electric car, so I haven't really looked further than that. But they seem to be standardized from what I've heard. It's within the city, the ones that are on streets, it's all the same amount of money for the same amount of time. So they seem to have already standardized that.
Okay. And in these new charging stations, if there's parking involved, is there one charge for parking and one charge for the power, or is it all included, or what, as far as you know?
As far as I know, you still pay the parking meter separately. Yeah, power's separate.
Just asking. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Because I've seen the parking meter still be there, so it's not like both are still existing. Go ahead. I think that's Susan.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. It sounds like you have to do it. It's a good concept. But when I read it, there was a woman in another area who commented on how it's going to cut into the parking for normal people. And it made me think that, I doubt you can tie this together. But we are cutting back more and more on requirements in buildings and condos because we've got, cheap housing and we don't need car parking places. But her suggestion was having charging stations be a requirement in new building projects. And, my thing, I have always said, you need parking in LA in building projects. And I just, to take away more parking, I mean, it's so bad everywhere you go. I just feel like this is just one more thing to cut back on available parking.
I do think now, though, in any apartment or condo garage, there's always at least a 110 volt outlet by each parking spot. So you can plug it in there. It's not as energy efficient as a 220 volt charge, plug in.
Right. It takes a long time, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's
no, but they're cutting
answer.
back, and these new projects are not having 2 spots per unit and all that, and so again, it's another way to cut back on parking in the community.
Well, condos still require 2, and apartments have always required 1, and that's still a requirement. So, and single family homes require a 2-car garage. That, interestingly enough, the garage has to be built when a new house is being built, with a garage door and space for 2 cars. The day after the certificate of occupancy is signed off on, that owner can then turn that 2-car garage into an ADU. But it has to be built as the garage to begin with for the C of O. So, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and these new, with this whole thing with fourplexes, and you don't need to have parking, and there's lots of things that are changing with the parking rules. Anyway, that was my only objection. It was otherwise, it's a great idea.
Yeah. Am I the only one that doesn't know what an ADU is?
Accessory dwelling unit. So before people like in Studio City would turn their garage illegally into like an efficiency. They'd put in a little mini kitchen and a bathroom, and they'd rent it out. That was done illegally because you couldn't have that on a single family lot. Now you can with the ADU, and now with SB 9, theoretically you could have the main house plus 3 more of those. Although baseline mansionization still plays into it. You still can't go over the total square footage of what is allowed. So, like a new house in my neighborhood that was built that could be 3,600 square feet, they've already maxed out, so they could never build an ADU. But a similar house, the house that was there before was like 1,600 square feet. And when that was still there before it was torn down, they would have been able to build 3 ADUs as long as they didn't go over the 3,600 baseline mansionization total.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, this motion is really just, we're going along with what the state says we have to do. Really no more than that right now. Did you have, go ahead, Richard, and then Scott.
This sounds like with the build it but don't use it, like in many bathrooms you have the plumbing for a watered urinal, but they install the waterless urinals. So it's not the same thing. You turn it in, you're required to build it, but you don't have to actually use it. The other thing is that the electric charging stations do take parking away from people who wish to visit the Studio City Library. You don't really need 4 parking for that. We're in that library for the charging stations. That's all.
All right, thanks. Go ahead, Scott.
I just wanted to add that the assembly bills that are being referenced also applies to the permitting process for single family homes. You still need to get a permit to put a charging station at your home. So this also streamlines that. It's not just charging stations that take away public parking or library parking. In fact, I'm not sure how much of that is even addressed in this motion, because this is the Department of Building and Safety and Planning. So like even when you put in a water heater, you're supposed to get a permit from the city. And the assembly bills that this references also mentions homeowners. So any of us who have a home who want to put in a charger for your new Tesla, you got to get a permit. And this makes it, this streamlines it. Again, I support this, but the top of the motion starts off in 2015, okay? And now they're saying they don't have the requirements in place in the city of this government code, which started in 2015. That's our city for you. Thanks.
Yeah, yes, and we don't have, you know, SB 9 took effect January 1st, and we still don't have an implementing ordinance. So, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Well, you
Susan,
don't want to move too quickly
yeah.
on these things, you know.
Susan, were you still raising your hand?
There's a hand up.
I lowered her hand. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't. I don't know. That.
Okay, no problem.
I thought it went down.
All right. Seeing no more comments, do I have a second for this?
Second.
Second from Jeff. Okay. Seeing no more hands raised, I'll read it one more time and we'll take a vote. The board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, supports Council File 22-0120 for streamlining and expediting the permitting process for electric vehicle charging stations, EVCS, as required by the State of California Amended Government Code Section 65850.7 in parentheses G in parentheses 1, and that's Assembly Bill 1236. This motion is also to be submitted as a community impact statement, CIS, to CF 22-0120. So all in favor, say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
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 And everyone else raise their hand. So we are unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 10, comments from committee members on subject matter within the committee's jurisdiction. Anybody have anything else they want to mention?
Can I ask I'm sorry.
Let me do Brandon first.
Yeah. Okay, really quick. I'm looking at the ad hoc rules. If we have 4 board members, it does not have to be a public meeting, but once we have somebody outside of the governing body, say we want to bring Jeff in, then it becomes a Brown meeting. So as long as we have 4 SCNC board members and nobody else, it's not, the Brown Act does not apply. Once we bring in a stakeholder, then it has to be a Brown Act meeting. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks for checking that. And yeah, I think our plan is good. And then, you know, Jeff will be able to comment when you give your report. And hopefully you'll be able to give us a report maybe a little in advance of the meeting so we can go over it. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Scott, go ahead.
My question is whether this is the jurisdiction of government affairs, something like, say, the George Gascon recall proposed ballot measure. According to Empower LA, the neighborhood councils may take positions on a ballot measure or a proposed ballot measure before it's placed on the ballot and communicate our positions to the city council. Is the George Gascon recall, which is a proposed ballot measure, something that government affairs would want to take up, or is that a hot potato?
I've always understood when it involves a person that the neighborhood council cannot comment on it. We can comment on ballot measures and propositions, but not, he's essentially a candidate for removal from office. So I would think not, but maybe we should, does somebody want to check with our Dunn representative? Sure.
I'll do it.
Or yeah.
Was that what happened with like the John Englander thing in North Hills? They commented on it and they got in a lot of trouble. The John Lee Englander thing a while back.
I seem to recall something like that. So it's definitely worth checking out. And if you find out otherwise, we could agendize it.
I'll ask tomorrow, because my understanding is that a recall is a ballot measure. So I will get clarification from our new, I believe his name is Lorenzo. I'll put him on the case.
Now,
okay.
Let me ask you. Once it becomes a ballot measure, we can no longer talk about it. That's part of the new digital communications policy. But until it becomes a ballot measure, we could talk about it, correct?
That's what I'm reading on Empower LA under the do's. On the don'ts.
Oh, so they want to prevent us from commenting on stuff like that in the future?
We can take a position on a ballot measure or a proposed ballot measure before it is placed on the ballot, and we can communicate our position to the city council. It's a little more tricky if we communicate our position on our website to the public and to the stakeholders, but we can communicate our community impact statement or our request for action.
But in the recall, there wouldn't be a council file to submit a community impact statement to. So I'm not sure where our motion would even go. Would we send it to the county clerk that runs the elections down in Norwalk?
Well, it says we would communicate our position to the city council. So it might just be a letter to all the council members. I'll find out.
Okay.
I'll get the deal. I'll get the scoop tomorrow. Thanks.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Just one final question, maybe. On this Kiev, Los Angeles sister city thing, is it possible for us tonight to pass a sense of the committee recommendation, don't call it a motion, that this would be something that we would hope to do? Because I don't know what's going on over there right now, but it didn't look too good 3 hours ago. And I'm just thinking that if we could get something into the record tonight unanimously, that that would be good, because tomorrow or next week or next month, it may be,
too late.
I don't want to say too late, but sort of moot.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, but it's not agendized. So,
okay.
And,
all right.
And something from a committee doesn't have any weight, even if we did do it. The board has to vote. But we certainly can have it on the board agenda 2 weeks from tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on number 10? Closing comments. Just was going to say thank you for everyone who's going to be on our ad hoc committee, and Scott for checking out the thing on Gascon, and for your idea for Jeff for the idea for the motion supporting the sister city motion, which we say was going to bring that. Oh, Jeff Hartwick is going to bring that. Thank you, Jeff, at the next board meeting. And our next committee meeting will be the first Wednesday in April at 6 p.m. And I don't have that date in front of me offhand, but it's the first Wednesday. All right. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Richard. Thank you. So we are adjourned at 7:09 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you,
Bye.
Barry. And